to the front of the net. Puck work to the outside to Eklund. Howe back to Eklund again. Kerr sparring with Stevens in front. Eklund creeps behind. Out in front to Kerr. He scores! Tim Kerr and the Flyers are perfect on 5-on-3s. They are 3 for 3. Get their first power play goal of the night and tie the game.
TheFourthPeriod.com presents the O&B Puckcast. Episode number 77. Is Phase 3 upon us? Well, we'll find out. I'm your host, Isaiah.
I'm Dan the Flyer fan.
I'm Chef B.
And Dan, it's great to have you back. I see you, you're redoing your roof last week, and it sounds like it took a lot out of you, but, you're going to soldier through tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm back. They stuck around late to finish because there was a storm coming in that night, and they didn't leave till about 9:30, so I figured I'd take the night off rather than ruining the audio. So I'm back this week.
Nah, it's okay. You got to have a roof, man. Food, clothing, and shelter. But, someone who's got real concerns that we've been worried about since last year, and, of course, we're talking about Oskar Lindblom. Gentlemen, Oskar Lindblom has completed his radiation treatments, and he's done his treatments for now. If you listen to Chuck Fletcher, things are very optimistic, and it's just some good news we could, really use right now. And they had tweets all over the place with him ringing the bell, signifying that his treatment was complete. Everybody's really happy about it. He's got a picture of him and his girlfriend in a mask, and she's really been a tower of strength for him. And Dan, listening to Chuck Fletcher, he had some really complimentary things to say about Oskar, but he also said, kind of intimated that it's not impossible that that Oskar could play hockey again.
Yeah, he sounds very positive about the situation moving forward, and it's great to hear that he's clean one way or the other. I believe the original rumors that he was going to finish up in September, October, and the fact that it's I guess it was late June when he actually finished. But it's good to see that he's clean, and personally, that's what it comes down to first, is him being okay as a human being, and if he can come back and join the Flyers at some point in the future, it's an added bonus. And it would be obviously a huge boost to the lineup as a player. And it's just it's good, positive news in this time when we don't have too much of that.
Yeah,
definitely, Chef.
Well, it was awesome. I know there was a lot of swirling around about people upset that he was actually skating with the team. But after seeing, I was like, ooh. But after seeing the pictures, I think Zach Hill did it. Of him smiling ear to ear, grin. He was so happy in every single picture he took. And, I have family members that are going through it right now. They're going through cancer treatment. And you look at these milestones that they look for. And I think, he took a lot of heat for being out there on the ice. But he's a grown man. And I think he knew the risks and he knew what it would take. And I think it was part of his regimen and his healing and getting back there is a huge moral victory of skating out on that ice and going, that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be on the ice skating by July 4th or whatever, you know what I mean? It was one of those marks to hit for him probably, and that's what it looked like. And I think that's why he was so happy. You could see it that. It was all right, that was my goal, and I hit it, and I'm back, So I was very happy for him, his family, and all that, and the organization. That's a huge win there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about in the last show. I mean, he's not on the ice unless the Flyers medical staff okays it. It's just not happening. So I mean, he might have had personal goals, and I'm sure that was integrated into the consideration. But there's no way he's out on the ice unless it was something he could handle, and obviously it is, and that's a great thing. But gents, we got to talk about what's going on with the NHL, their protocols that they came up with, the hub cities, and then the return to play, the schedule. Let's get into that. Let's first tackle the hub city choice. The NHL smartly kind of checked off certain boxes and said, well, this city's still in consideration. Let's forget this city. The coronavirus numbers are too high, death rates. They checked with doctors, epidemiologists, I'm sure. And at the end of the day, it was Edmonton and Toronto that all the games are going to be held in. And when everything winds down in the preliminary round, and we'll get to all that, don't worry, we got all that covered for you. Then everything's going to shift to Edmonton, where they have the lowest number of cases of this virus. And Dan, were you surprised that Vegas got left in the dust, or do you think they were just kind of being coy and waiting for the best numbers and the accommodations and accommodation right there as the reason why they were going to go with the hub city that they did?
I'm not surprised they left Vegas in the dust. It was probably the smart thing to do, given that they've been spiraling out of control ever since they opened up. But I thought for sure they were going to stick with them. Kind of have the one in the U.S. and one in Canada, and Vegas obviously has the amenities and the facilities and the ice surface that Vegas has there in their practice facility to get it done. So I thought for sure they were going to stick with that, but they smartly moved. I think going to a place of least resistance at this point, which would be in Canada, with small cases and familiarity for a lot of the players, is probably the best move right now if they really want to see this thing through to the end. So I'm not surprised at the choices. Obviously Toronto there as well. That's been a name that's been circulating from the beginning, but seemed like it was less set in stone than Vegas was. So not surprised they picked that, and they picked Edmonton because it's kind of out in rural nowhere out there in Alberta. So it's a good move. I think at the end of the day, it was the right two cities to pick.
Yeah, it looks like it. And Chef, if you look at the tentative target dates, we're going to get into what the league is putting together and the CBA package. But let's get right to the action first and talk about some of these details that people really want to know about. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about how many tests they're going to do or anything like that, because you're probably hearing that everywhere. When are they going to start playing? When are we going to start seeing players come in the training camp? Well, if everything is approved and they're wrapping a 4-year extension into this CBA as part of this whole return to play plan, which is probably smart. They're getting together, talking about league business. They might as well knock it out and assure some labor peace. Some of the other sports are having their issues for one reason or another. The NHL is on solid ground here, and if everything goes to plan, on July 13th, that's next Monday, the training camps would reopen. And Chef, what's your thought about that?
Well, I thought it was a brilliant move to extend the CBA, and I'll tell you why. I said because we already had this huge interruption right now. What the one thing you don't want is another setback in a year and a half, 2 years, right? So when they sit down at the table and it's a disruption. But more importantly, okay, they get back to play. If you look look at the calendar in the next 24 months, and I'll tell you, when would they go back to regular schedule? If they had to address this right now, because if they're pushing everything back, by the time they even out with a short off season for the next 2 years, you're in the Olympics, you're into this stuff that they wanted to get back to, because I think the players, I think it's the best thing for the sport, for the players to go out and play for their respective countries. I think it brings it worldwide and broadens, gets it out there to more people. You're going to hit more people, a fan audience. And coming back first, I'm thinking too that hopefully you can broaden your base of people, because there's nothing, let's face it, there's no other sport like playoff. There's nothing other playoffs like playoff hockey. So I thought it was smart. They needed to address it, and with the way the schedule was going to be the next 2 years, it was smart to include the extra 4 years now and getting it done and over with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, if everything works out, goes to plan, they go through the testing protocol that we're going to just kind of gloss over a little bit. July 26th, the teams would report to the hub cities, and August 1st, Phase 4, the games will be played. And according to Bob McKenzie, I think they're going to play, 6 games a day spread out through the day at, noon, 4, and 8 in the different time zones or something like that. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I saw that tweet right before we went on air here as I frantically try and pull it up. Should add noon, 4 to 8 p.m. template schedule. Can be tweaked here and there depending on TV scheduling needs. So, yeah, it seems like that's what they're going to do. And, obviously they want to get through the play-in round as quick as possible, and probably the whole thing as quick as possible, quite frankly. And that's probably the best way to do it, is getting 3 games a day in there and pushing through it and getting it wrapped up. You got to do what you can here. It's going to be interesting to watch hockey at noon every day, but I'll take it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and every game is going to be one of consequence. Now, I should add that while the preliminary rounds are being played by the teams that were kind of on the outside looking in, the teams that were not among the top 4 in each conference, there will be a round-robin tourney for seeding between those top 4. So that's what the Flyers will be doing while, I guess, Edmonton is playing. Who are they playing? Chicago. And all the other matchups around the league, I think we'll touch on them just a little bit. But the other part of it is that they're going to be playing straight through until early October. And that's going to be really strange to present a Stanley Cup if everything goes to plan. That time, then mid-October, they'd have the draft. And November 1st would be free agency. And these are all the things that are proposed. Of course, we have to figure out what the heck is going on with the Phase 2 of the draft lottery. But before we get into that craziness, Chef, your thoughts about that schedule and what you were saying about trying to get back to a normal schedule. It seems like it's going to be very difficult to do that for a couple seasons at least.
Oh yeah, I mean, make no bones about it. Like you're okay. What time is camp usually? What, September? And then we start sometime in October, the first week of October normally. So we're going to be hoisting the cup in October. So it's going to be a big difference. And now we're starting the season 2.5 months in, if they start in December at all, which I don't think they will. I think they will start the season just because it makes more sense. You don't want to break up the schedule because then you would have to schedule around the holidays and all that. And so I think it will they'll end up going January 2nd or 3rd, the season will start. And what will happen is that now that puts you back 2 months, and they'll play through and they'll have a shorter summer and try to get back as early as they can. But it's still going to take 2 years because I'm sure it's probably built into their agreement now that, hey, the reason why they extended it to 4 seasons would be to allow enough of an off season now so these guys are not going to be killing themselves and becoming more injury prone because we're just trying to get back to a regular schedule, So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all evolves out after they announce the deal.
Yeah, and a lot of it is going to be dependent upon some of the conditions that the players are going to have to deal with, and as we enter into this. As we turn back toward some of the details of the return to play Phase 3, Phase 4 protocol, let's just cover a couple of these. And I'm very thankful to our buddy Jamie Basco at FlyersNittyGritty.com. And he had a tweet thread that I thought kind of summed it up very nicely. And I'll just give you some highlights of his highlights. And you're going to have a limit of 30 players in Phase 3. With an unlimited number of goalies. And only players eligible to play in 1920 are going to be permitted to be part of that. So who's the guy they signed, Dan?
Hogberg.
Right. Well, Hogberg, but I'm talking about the veteran guy for next year who Robert Haig was friends with, the guy from Sweden.
Isn't that Sundin, Rasmus Sundin?
Right. So he wouldn't be part of that, obviously. Now, any player can opt out without penalty, and they have a very elaborate testing program. It's going to cost them millions of dollars. It's really very extensive. All players and club personnel will be tested the first 48 hours prior to returning to club facilities, and every other day, with the results being available within 24 hours. So if it's going to take 24 hours, it shows that they're using a more sophisticated testing method than just like a swab. It's probably a more sensitive, specific, what have you, because it needs to be. There's too much at stake here. Now, any player may opt out of phase 3 or 4, but it must be submitted in writing by July 7th, and each of the clubs have to submit their participants by July 9th. Now, the players will consult with the club doctor who performs a physical, and they'll interact or interface with the infectious disease expert that each club has hired or has access to. And there's going to be players, Dan, you think of guys like Capo Caco and Max Domi, who are type 1 diabetics. And I think it was Bob McKenzie was saying they also both have celiac disease. So some of these guys are going to be told, and I'm told both of these guys want to play, but they might be told, depending on some other things that we don't know about, that they can't play because there's a risk of exposure with this virus, and they might be deemed unfit.
Yeah, it's probably the right move to keep, the compromised ones out. It's going to be a risky enough play here, bringing the healthy people in, let alone the ones that are medically, inept in some way or another. So those two probably won't be playing. I remember Max Domi said he did want to play, but health-wise, it's probably not the smartest move here. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what the official word is from those two.
Yeah, and now if the player disagrees, they can get a second opinion. And that's part of the standard player contract. So I do have to, maybe I'm inferring something from your comment with the risk. I think the most risk, and we talked about this on other shows, is really the coaches and executives. And unless someone in the player's family is compromised in some way, because the risk to the players, if they're otherwise healthy, is, according to the latest information I have from the Stanford epidemiologist, it's like 1 in 10,000. So I'm not saying it's nothing. We all want it to be nothing, but you're twice as likely to die in a motor vehicle accident in Pennsylvania, according to the highway statistics in 2015. So I'm just trying to put some perspective behind that. That doesn't mean there's no risk at all, and there couldn't be a freaky thing. And like on last show, I talked about Alex Appleyard and I going back and forth about some soccer players who had issues. No doubt, there's definitely some risk. Okay, just continuing here, face masks must be worn at all times, except for exercising and time on the ice. There will be daily temperature and symptom checks at home, 2 hours, less than 2 hours before leaving for the training facility, and the players' families will be allowed to join for conference finals, the Stanley Cup final in Edmonton, and they will be allowed to share hotel rooms. So they're going to be conducting, Chef, over 20,000 tests in the first 10 days at the hub city, and in that process they'll be allowed to bring at least one content creator, social media employee. And the last detail, I guess, to take a line from the Jack Nicholson movie, coaches won't be required to wear face mask coverings on the bench, and I'm sure that's probably because they're going to be tested so often. Chef, what say you?
Well, okay, I can see this. This is a double-edged sword here. Okay, so are you? I mean, I have family, and I've been quarantined with my family. If I've been with my family that whole time, now also at work, when we were working, I was with the same 4 people for literally 12 weeks almost. We didn't go anywhere. I was smart about it. I said to them, I said, look, if you need to buy food, we are a restaurant. We will sell you food. You don't have to go to the store. I'll sell you at a cost here from here. So we were kind of smart about it, and I could see their reasoning. Okay, if all these players are going to be around each other and the coach and isolated for that X amount of time, and we all know, and that they're tested every 2 days or whatever you said, going up to that point, is the mask a redundant issue now because there's no fans, there's nobody else that they're going to come in contact with during this time period? So I can kind of sort of see it because I don't wear a mask when I'm home here with my family. You know what I mean?
Right.
So kind of like when you're on the road and stuck together, you're quarantined with who you're quarantined with. So I guess it kind of makes sense. I don't know. I'm sure you'll find a couple coaches out there that won't take a chance and they will go down that road of wearing a mask. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, the mask is more than likely only going to help you or keep you from spreading it to somebody else unless you're getting a real professional setup like an N95 and a face shield and the whole 9 yards. But we'll see what happens with that. But gents, in the process of this timetable that we laid out earlier, before we kind of got a little buried in some of those details, and on August 10th, Phase 2 of the NHL Draft Lottery will be held. And Dan, we got to talk about the crazy thing that happened just with this lottery. Now, obviously, the prize of this draft is Alexis Lafreniere, and he's clearly the best player. But he's going to a team that is to be determined. And after that, I mean, we talked about on other shows about how crazy this could get. So one of these teams that is playing these preliminary rounds when play resumes is going to have an equal shot at him, if I understand correctly. And the only disqualifying factor would be if one of those teams won the Stanley Cup. Otherwise, they end up with Lafreniere.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, and I ranted my little heart out about this on, I think it was BPW Radio last week, and it's just, what a stupid system. What a dumb way to go about this. I don't know. It depends who it comes down to. You know, I claimed on Angry Negative Show last night, if it goes to Pittsburgh or Edmonton, I'm going to have a rant like I've never heard before, and that might be true, because it just feels, I don't want to say rigged, but like, come on, you know. Mathematically speaking, it's not an overly surprising finish. The combined playoff teams had a higher percentage than the Red Wings. I don't remember what the number was off the top of my head.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know. They should not have been included from the get-go, in my opinion. It should have been split evenly between the last 8 teams or however many didn't make the playoffs and just gone from there. I have no idea why you're including teams that could have finished as high as second in the Pacific, I believe it was,
right,
are going to have an opportunity to get the first overall pick. So I don't know. It's just really a really stupid thing to do.
It certainly turned out that way. Just, Chef, before I get your comments, just to run down the first 8 here. Obviously, one is to be determined, and one of the teams that's in the tourney that's going to be waiting for the Flyers, perhaps, will get Lafreniere. So that'll be, he's a really, really great player. I don't know if he's quite ready to come in and be an impact player right away, but he's considered a blue chip player. But after that, you have the LA Kings, have the number 2 pick. Number 3, you have Ottawa Senators, and that's the one they got from San Jose. And number 4, Detroit Red Wings, who are very, very disappointed. They probably had the jersey made up. It didn't work out. And Ottawa Senators get another pick, the one they earned righteously. And then, of course, you have Anaheim Ducks, number 6. New Jersey Devils, number 7. Watch out for those guys. And the cluster frack from hell, Buffalo Sabres, number 8. Jeff?
Yeah, of course. The one thing, the odds of what happening obviously weren't that great, but it was good enough for it to happen. Instead, I just don't understand why they. I understand what they did. They wanted to have something out there and keep the peak interest in hockey, but I just think, like Dan said, it wasn't the best system. I mean, I could see you doing this after. I could see you doing the whole lineup of people that get knocked out in the qualifying round and adding them to the lottery mix, and then doing just them for the number one spot, and then after all that, however you get knocked out, and that's how it gets seeded. I'm fine with that. This is a little far-fetched to me. I think it won't be that bad. I'm hoping that somebody worthy enough gets it. Maybe a team, one of those fringe teams that need it, like need to restart and rebuild. So I'm hoping that's the case. But of course, the worst case scenario is going to happen when it comes to this.
Yeah, I'm hoping they get I hope he goes to the Minnesota Wild, some team that's going to be rebuilding and nobody will really care. And to me, it's like, you know what, Minnesota, they spent a lot of money and really went for it a couple of years back with Fletcher. It didn't work out, and now they're just kind of floundering. Let him get him. It's a good hockey market, and they could use something. That would be good for the league, I think. But of course, he'll go to Pittsburgh, something like that. But like you were saying, so. The CBA, it's going to be 4 years. It was talked about for 6, but they made it 4. They're voting on it, and like we talked about earlier, the executive committee, then the players and the owners need 2/3 to approve it. I don't think they will go this far. The owner's going to say no. But Dan, I just wanted to talk about among the 4 sports leagues. You can say what you want about how the NHL did things with the draft and everything. But I think they've done the best job out of all the 4 sports leagues in organizing this thing, working together, having a spirit of cooperation, and keeping the fans up to date step by step through the process.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't even think it's close. How this all plays out is kind of TBD. Obviously, we'll find out in the next, within the next month here. But I mean, leading up to it, the cooperation between the players and owners, and keeping the fans informed, and feeling like they're fighting towards a common goal, and taking the precautions, and just everything that they've done. I mean, the NBA, was hell bent on going to Florida, which seems like a horrible idea right now, and the MLB, went back and forth for 2 months, spatting and arguing about, games and between the owners and players, and it was just a freaking disaster. So, yeah, in terms of just getting everything together, getting the ball rolling, and trying to see this through to the end, they have absolutely done the best job of the 4 major sports.
Yep. Chef, you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm going to pose a question to both you guys, too. Do you think this, when it comes back, since I really do believe they did a great job handling this, do you think that this could be like the best ratings that they've ever had? One, for a couple reasons, I think, and I'll see if you guys agree with me, but one, it's going to be the only sports on TV besides golf, right? And and it'll be, we have their undivided attention. I think people are so starved, and you're getting, let's face it, like I said before, it's the best playoffs of any sport, period. So I just think they got a huge opportunity here to own the market for like almost a month by themselves and be the premier and show everybody, hey, we're not just a joke. We're not the 5th sport behind NASCAR or whatever anymore. So what do you guys think?
I think he's made a really good point, Dan, because I think this is the NHL's time to shine. I'd feel better if they were on ESPN, but I mean, the way the NBA's going, hashtag dig my cause, we're all stuck here in Orlando, versus what the NHL is kind of like doing the playoffs right away. I think Chef's on to something.
Yeah, they're going to have an opportunity to be the only game in town. And, obviously with no fans in the building, you're going to have more tune in on TV, and, the expanded playoff format with all 24 teams, they're going to have an opportunity here, and he's definitely onto something about the ratings being good, and it'll be interesting to see how that translates to the actual numbers when the TV comes through.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead, Chef. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, and just think about it too. You get like a 1-2 punch here. You get this qualifying round where all the teams kind of try to play in, right? And then you have the round robin tournament, the seed, the top 4,
right?
Which is something both these things never happened before. So you're getting like a bonus, and then the actual playoffs start. The actual Stanley Cup, the grueling series that it is. It's going to be. I think it just. We might have hated the idea of all this at first, but I get it. And now when you think about it, this could add like more allure and like legend to actually winning the Stanley Cup than we thought previously that this was a joke of a playoff thing. So I think it has potential.
Yeah, I think it's going to be grueling. I think the asterisk will be erased in people's minds by the time they get this thing done, especially you have a couple players who test positive, they have to drop out. It's really like a war of attrition. I think it'll be a unique experience. We'll look back on it, and we'll be glad we got through it, and we can throw away our freaking masks, but that's something else. I'm looking forward to everything getting started, but we got more stuff to cover tonight. Some really interesting things have come up. And I just wanted to mention that the Flyers are announcing their end of the season awards this week. And Dan, what do you think about Kevin Hayes winning the Gene Hart Memorial Award for having the most heart?
I think it's a well-deserved award for him this year. I think he came in and completely entranced the fan base, and the wacky videos, the pregame stuff, and just his general personality. He really won over a lot of the fan base who, like myself, questioned his arrival last summer, and he definitely won me over. And I think a vast majority of fans would agree with that. And I think it's a well-deserved win for him this year.
Yeah, and the thing about him, Chef, didn't we talk about how this team had no personality last year? And he comes in, and it's almost like modular. He plugs in, and it's like he's been with them for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what was his thing? What did he say? He said, like, all the right things, too. So anybody that was complaining that he was overpaid or anything like that, he's led the league in shorthanded goals, clutch goals for us at a couple times. I mean, he just said, he's happy to be here. He felt at home right away. Best fan base in all of sports, So I just think or hockey, I should say. I just think it was awesome that he when he came here, he went all in. So, and I think it related to his play. I think it related to it's somebody like that can relate to that fans can relate to. He's just a hard worker, and you can see it every time he's out there on the ice.
Yeah, he said and did all the right things. He got on the good side of this fan base, and as we all know, that is critical if you're going to make it here. Now, Travis Konecny had already won the Toyota Cup Award for the top 3-star tallies, points, and stuff like that. And he'll be up possibly for the award that's going to be announced tomorrow, and that's a Pelle Lindbergh Award for the most improved player. But today, Scott Lawton wins the Yannick Dupre Class Guy Award. And that has a lot to do with your interactions with the press, but also how you come off in and out of the locker room and how you're received. And I thought that also was a pretty good choice, Dan.
Yeah, he seemingly took a big step forward this year in pretty much every single aspect of his game and what he brought to the ice and on and off. So I much like Hayes, rather, I think it is a muchly deserved award this year for Scott Lawton.
Yeah, I mean, you look back, and I was screaming at the TV, Chef, Ole Mata, he's there, take him, and it turned out, here we are, it took 8 years, but Scott Lawton was the better pick. I don't think there's really anybody else that could have been taken that realistically would have been rated that high, and that was a really crappy draft. But good for Scott Lawton. Took him forever, but here we are. I mean, maybe him and a couple of these other guys can salvage G's prime and bring home a cup.
Oh yeah, definitely. The thing was, like, and he always has a meme mug on. It's so funny. And then you figure, like, all the memes out there now with the Flyers of him just staring at you like he's staring right through you. And then to get the Class Guy award, I think, is like the icing on the cake. I think he deserved it. He deserved it because he's totally professional.
Oh, yeah, Dan, the thing with Lawton, he's got that serial killer face. Because he just stares like, he's got the hatchet in his other hand,
I always wait for him to go, "Hello, Clarice." Like whatever. You look at like the memes. You could put him in the poster for Silence of the Lambs, and probably people wouldn't think twice because of the way that stare he gives you.
Are you sure that it is you who's in control? Anyway, so Thursday they're going to have the Barry Ashby Award for the best defenseman. That's Ivan Provorov, and the Bobby Clark Award on Friday for the Flyers MVP. And I'm predicting it'll be Sean Couturier. Dan, you want to weigh in on either one of those?
Yeah, Sean Couturier sounds right. Yeah, Sean Couturier.
Best defenseman? Who do you think?
Niskanen. Provorov.
Okay.
Niskanen. Provorov. Niskanen.
Okay. Chef? What, your defenseman?
Yeah. Either one, Provi or Niskanen, I think are fine in that case. I could throw in a couple of things just because it was, he was a highlight reel when he was playing. Carter Hart, he stole at least 4 games that I can think of off the top of my head, the way he played. So, but absolutely not upset if Coots gets it at all.
Not, especially you think that Coots has a real shot at that Selke. And apparently the votes are already in. They already voted because the season's over. So somebody's sitting on that result. But we'll find out soon enough. They'll announce the awards after the season like they usually do. It's just going to be a hell of a lot later. But, gents, we got to take up the case here. The Flyers have suffered some losses. They're not exactly hemorrhaging talent, but Misha Vorobyev has signed with the KHL, and he's probably, even though they don't lose his rights, he's probably not coming back to the Flyers anytime soon, if at all. And Wyatt Kalynuk, who was a 7th-round draft pick in 2017, has opted to test NHL free agency, and he just signed yesterday, I believe it was, with Chicago, who described him as a Nick Leddy kind of a player. You want to weigh in on either one of those?
Not surprised that either are gone. Vorobyev, the rumors about Vorobyev leaving have been there pretty much since the start of this season. Mm-hmm. And after his failed stint with the Flyers through November, December, whenever it was, this year, and got sent back down, the writing was kind of on the wall for him. From a Phantom's perspective, it sucks. He was probably their best player this year, so as far as losing him as a forward, it's no fun. But as far as the organizational depth overall, easy for me to say, it's probably not that big a loss. And Kalynuk, he wanted to find a team where he had a legit shot at making the NHL, and realistically, that wasn't going to happen in Philadelphia one way or the other. The NHL, the 6 men up there are full. Their 7th guy is full. Down in the Phantoms, they have Zamula, Wiley, and Hogberg down there now, so it's not like he had a top spot down there. And he's going to Chicago, where they're cap-strapped and have a pretty awful defense. So he'll more likely get an NHL opportunity there, which is exactly what he wanted. So, hopefully he doesn't amount to too much. I guess that sounds pretty bad to say, but from a Flyers perspective, hopefully you're not losing too much at the end of the day there.
No, he's not rated, from what I understand, he's nowhere near the category of York or Zamula in terms of potential. Either one of them or any of them are going to look like in 5 years. But he definitely has a chance to be a player in the league. Maybe a third pairing, maybe a 4-5 guy at the most. Chef, your comments?
Well, I think it was totally his doing too. I really don't think the Flyers made an offer from what I've been reading around. I don't think they did. And could they really? They have all those guys like that Dan just mentioned, and they can only get an X amount more contracts to stay under the rule, right? So unless they extend something on a CBA, which they're not going to do that because we know that they're going to be hurting for money. So we know that it's not going to move anywhere. So it was kind of like, you know, it was probably the nicest thing that they could do for them. Say, hey, go out and test the waters. If you get here, if we sign you, you're going to be stuck behind. You might not see the NHL for 4 years. You know what I mean? So you don't want that.
I didn't hear that. No, I thought the Flyers are still trying to sign him.
They weren't.
That's how. That's what I heard. I don't. What's that?
No, I couldn't find anything saying that. So, well, what's good though, he gets to go out to. He's going to Chicago, and that's a good thing. I mean, they got it's not a great defense. It's like you said, but there are a couple aging guys up there, so it looks like he has a chance to come in and make an impact sooner than later.
Yeah, in fact, one of the guys that they thought could be a candidate to be bought out after this season is ironically Oli Mata, who's in Chicago now. So just a little to tie that loose end up. So yeah, I think they wanted to sign Kalynuk, and especially considering they lost Vorobyov, and that's a contract that they're not responsible for. But hey, it didn't work out, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, Dan, remember all the people that are freaking out when we lost here? Wait for it. Cooper Marody. Look out now. You're talking like, where is he going to finish in the Rocket Richard?
Yeah, it's going to happen every time we lose a prospect, and especially the untested ones that haven't had a shot in the AHL. Like Vorobyov, everybody kind of is over the guy. Kalynuk didn't have that opportunity, and thus they're going to put him in some kind of pedestal until he proves otherwise. So, I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't think it's a major loss. I don't think a lot of these players coming out of college ever really, truly, kick the door down. And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in 2-3 years' time for him? But at the end of the day, it's not a big loss. You have more than enough defensemen in the system that are very, very talented. Like we said at the AHL level with Zamula and Wiley and Linus Hogberg, that you probably won't even notice that he's not there.
Yeah. And then we have Cam York coming next year. So
yes, yep.
So, and they got enough. What's that?
You got to admit, though, Cooper Marody is such a cool hockey name, though.
Oh yeah, definitely great name. But I mean, he's probably a tweener, or what they call a quad A. So you can't keep them all. You can't keep them all. But gents, why don't we move to some of these? We talked about some of the matchups actually in the last show, but some of the odds, and what site, I just want to give them credit because I don't want to, VegasInsider.com. Now, these are the odds to win the 2020 NHL Eastern Conference. And two teams are tied with first 3-1. Boston, Tampa, and the Flyers and Washington are both 5-1, and after that it goes a little off the rails, 17-2. It's not as bad as it sounds, but still it's significantly different. So the top four are ones you'd expect because they're the top four teams, and they don't have to play that preliminary round. Chef.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the odds for the Cup and for all the teams, and I saw where the Flyers were, and they were 10-1. Might have to drive by Parks Casino there, drop something down there, drop $100 on there just in case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you never know.
But you never know, and especially this season too. It's interesting, and I was on a handicap show before, so I kind of, those guys know. They know more than we think that they know. So when those odds put up there, they're doing it for a reason. That they're pretty confident they're not going to lose their shirt based on, I guess, years of experience and all that. So it's no surprise, like you said, who are the ones that are at the top of the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. And then it does drop off significantly after that, but it's not a surprise to me though.
No, and if you look at the Cup odds, that's a whole different ballgame there. You have what is it? Boston and Tampa tied at 13-2, and then you have Colorado and Vegas are 8-1, and Capitals 9-1, Flyers 10-1, and the defending champions, the St. Louis Blues 11-1. And I picked Vegas and Boston before the season began, and I don't know if that. I mean, I didn't put any money on it, but I just said it, and somebody ridiculed me, and I don't look so dumb right now. But Dan, I was just wondering, you think about a team like Vegas, just to digress a little bit. Did they ever imagine? I mean, I should ask you about Chicago when they traded Robin Lehner. He was in Chicago, right?
Yep.
And they probably had no idea where that was headed, and now they're in a playoff. And I know they have Corey Crawford, but it's really interesting what's going to happen in Vegas. Are they going to give Fleury the initial opportunity, and he'll have a short leash before they go to Lehner? Or what do you think happens there?
I would assume it's Fleury's net until proven otherwise. I don't know what the tandem was rolling out right before the season ended. I don't know what was going on there. I would need to look that up as far as who was playing the most minutes. But hey, it's a very solid 1A 1B scenario there, and they can always swap to Lehner if they have to. And obviously teams are allowed to carry the unlimited goalies if something goes wrong health wise, so they have that backup there as well. And it was a very, very smart pickup by the Vegas Golden Knights at the deadline.
Yeah.
Wasn't Subban in that mix too? Wasn't he with Vegas, or did he get traded?
I think he's still. Actually, I have no idea. I think he's still there. Malcolm Subban is Blackhawks, so he must have been part of that trade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was part of that.
That makes sense.
So yes, that would be interesting to see how that works out, and of course we just can't wait until they get back to play, and it's next week, less than a week. These guys are going to be reporting. They've already been tested. They'll go through this, and you're going to see, action of guys at least just skating around, training, like the season's beginning, and it's crazy. Gents, before we go, I noted earlier that November 1st, they obviously had moved the date for the free agency back. I guess that's 5 months. But if you look at these free agents and just taking a preliminary look, there's some decent names here. And Chef, most people would probably put Pietrangelo or Taylor Hall at the top of this list. It begs the question now, with the cap being flat due to lack of revenue, and with no word of any bird exception or coupon or buyouts, compliance buyouts, how the heck are guys like Pietrangelo, Taylor Hall, Torrey Krug, possibly Bufflin, Jacob Markstrom, the goalie from Vancouver, how are these guys going to get paid?
Yeah, it's a bad draw to luck, man, isn't it, this year? To be on a flat cap like this. I mean, you're looking down the list, and if you go down like, Justin Braun, there's all these defensemen down in there that look like they could have gotten at least one more decent payday, but it's going to be a flat salary, I think. It just sucks that this had to happen when it happened. I'm going down the list, and Trevor Van Riemsdyk starting to look like a half-decent deal at $2.3 million for somebody. It's going to stay that way. We know it ain't going to jump up, but I don't know. Maybe crazy things are happening. You could have a buyout, a waiver, or whatever you're talking about, but I just think everything's going to stay flat for a couple of years.
He's got money, Dan. Colorado. I mean, they could really make a move. I mean, they could win a cup for all we know, but I mean, if they don't win a cup and maybe their goaltending fails them, they might get adventurous if they could poach Lehner from Vegas, or maybe take a flyer on Braden Holtby.
$5.4 million still, and it looks like all of their major assets are already signed. So that's big for them. They got, obviously are on the edge of a potential cup win there. So who knows? They could be in the market for a big name player that may pop up after one of their teams may not have him. Who knows?
Yeah, they're one of those teams, and of course, there's going to be a wholesale fire sale with what's going on in Buffalo. They got some really bad contracts. We talked about that last show. But there's some teams that could get some talent that are not that far away. But most of the teams are going to, what is it going to be? Is it 81.5 again next year, the cap?
Yeah. That's the word right now. Maybe 82.5 if they're lucky. But yeah, they're supposedly going to stay flat at 81.
Yeah, I imagine until Seattle comes into the league or they sign the ESPN deal or whatever new deal they have with the new TV.
Wasn't it NBC?
What's that?
I thought it was NBC that they were talking to.
I think they want more than one outlet this time.
Oh,
Dan,
that's good.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that yourself?
I believe they're negotiating between the two.
Okay.
Not sure where they end up going. I don't know who has the upper hand last time I checked, but I know they're still talking to NBC, but ESPN is also in there.
Yeah. So that'll be a situation to watch with the revenue and the cap. And, of course, the Flyers, you think about them and kind of like as we were closing things out for tonight, the Flyers, to me, it goes back to something I think I said it was last show. Nolan Patrick is the fulcrum for everything. If he's healthy, he's not going to make a mint on this RFA deal he's got coming up. So he should come at a decent number, and that will determine whether the Flyers want to get adventurous with Derek Grant or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question mark, isn't it? I mean, and I hate to say this, because I'm not bashing Nolan Patrick, but what objectively is a fair deal to both of them, both the team and the player? Is it just the same amount of money and we'll just extend it another year to see how things go, see if you're even able to play anymore? I mean, I think that would be a very fair and generous offer, but I don't know where he stands. I don't have the insider information. I don't know if he's still skating or practicing, so I don't know any of that. I just think it's a huge question mark too. I mean, because, really, how can you go forward when you don't even know the health situation?
Yeah, it's really tough to figure out. Here's just something we could, before we go tonight, just think about this. These last several months have been like an off-season for players like Farabee and Frost. What if, due to this time off, they have had some physical maturity? Because, Dan, these guys can change a lot. They're so young in such a short period of time, and it's almost like we might be getting the early preview of their second year. And what if they flash and end up contributing a fair amount, and Nolan Patrick ends up looking like he's on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I mean, when you're 19, 20 years old and 4 months of rest and time to hit the gym and grow that way probably goes a long way. It'll be interesting. I actually just wrote a piece about that today, kind of about Morgan Frost and Nolan Patrick competing for that third line center role, and whoever gets back to the NHL level first kind of has the upper hand. And, Frost will probably get the call for the playoffs. He's obviously going to be a Black Ace. He's been in Philly training. But, whether he gets any ice time is to be determined. But I assume he will at some point. And, if he gets that and looks good and Nolan Patrick is on the sidelines, with whatever the injury is, then, hey, that job, that 3C job could be all his. And he could find a roster spot before Patrick even knew what hit him. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up working out. But, yeah, I mean, if Patrick can't get back, hopefully Frost can come in and take that reins.
Yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily the guy that I look at as a third-line center. But when you have Couturier and Hayes, there's a lot of flexibility there because you have two penalty killers. So if Hayes kind of drops down kind of informally, there's not really a second, third line with this team anyway. It's all based on production. And you know that Couturier is going to be on the top line. So it's very conceivable the scenario that you just laid out for us comes to fruition. I don't doubt it. Chef, any last words?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think it was good. I think we laid it all out there, and I'm very comfortable and happy with this show. I thought it was very, very informative.
Oh, we're rating the show. Dan, why don't you rate tonight's show for us?
It was a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay,
there you go.
4.5. You know, that just goes to show we got to work a little harder. But here's the great news. We think we have had a good show. The most important thing is that this time next week, the Flyers will have already reported to training camp. And guess what? We are going to be back next week with a show. And we're going to have Dennis Bernstein from thefourthperiod.com, because we are the official Flyers podcast of thefourthperiod.com. And we're going to talk about it. And we're going to know a heck of a lot more than we know now about what the final, the final agreement turned out to be, the votes and everything, and we'll be hopefully full steam ahead. We're looking forward to that very much. But for tonight, we think we laid it out for you. And Dan, why don't you let people know where people can find your work and can find you on social media?
Sure. Got a new Angry Negative show from last night, at Angry Negative, as we can find the links to that. It's also on my Twitter, at Dan the Flyer Fan, at Brotherly Puck, at Brotherly_pod as well. Be sure to subscribe to any of those shows if you do not already, and plenty of content up on brotherlypuck.com. The Players You Forgot series is almost done. I believe in the next 2 weeks or so it'll be wrapped up finally, so check all that out. The links are on the front page of brotherlypuck.com.
Fantastic. Magnifique. Chef?
Yeah, you can find me at Chef de l'FB on Twitter, and you can find me at Steam Pub in Southampton.
Terrific. I am Isaiah, ISAIAH_520. You can yell at me. I've been talking about some stuff besides hockey, and I'm sorry. We'll try and get back to talking about other stuff, but things are crazy. You know how it is. But when it comes to just following the Puckcast, O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck on Twitter. We also are on Facebook. You can check us out there. We have a YouTube channel along with several podcast platforms. If you could subscribe to the O&B Puckcast, it moves us up the charts so people know they're looking for Flyer podcasts. We come up a lot higher than we have in the past, and thanks to you, that is happening. And if you could give us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice, we appreciate that as well. So until next week when we are back with Dennis Bernstein of thefourthperiod.com, everybody take care.